How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've got a beer in my hand. I see a couple people that have beers in their hands. Well, to those of you who do, cheers. Yeah. Okay, so we got a chance to talk about my favorite subject, which is beer. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about Stone, about the world, about what's going on, and then we'll kind of seg directly to Q&A so I can talk about the stuff that you're interested in talking about. But I thought it'd be kind of nice to lay a little groundwork first. So what we see here is Germany. Germany, without question, the #1 brewing nation in the world. The best quality, the best character, the best range, the best availability. Hands down, everybody around the world knows that Germany is the place for beer. Anybody that knows anything. United States? Yeah, not so much. It's the laughing stock of the world when it comes to beer. Worst quality, worst range of choices. It's just, it's the most miserable beer market, and the rest of the world makes fun of American beer. These two things, these facts, absolute facts, nobody questions this around the world. There is no question whatsoever. These are true 35 years ago. But today, that's changed rather dramatically. In fact, at the World Beer Cup a couple of years ago that was held here in San Diego with more European judges by design than American judges, San Diego alone took more medals than Belgium, the UK, and Germany combined. I really like that clap because I just got back from Berlin on this past Thursday night, and I gave this talk to a German beer wholesalers association. I didn't get the clap at that point. It's a little tough for them to swallow, although the people who are in the industry there, they kind of know. They know the fact. They know that while Germany can be a really wonderful country for beer, the fact of the matter is if you don't have vacation time and a car and a gas card, you're kind of out of luck. Because if you've got time to travel around, you can visit all these small breweries that are authentic, doing a great job, putting out beers of great quality and interest. But for the most part, as an average German in an average city, your choices, put a fine point on this, suck. So, and today, American craft brewing styles are being replicated all over the world. They're calling beers American Pale Ales, American style IPA or West Coast style IPA, and so on and so on. In fact, I think in Germany, maybe 6 years ago, you might have found half dozen beers that would be labeled IPA. And today, you can find well over 100 brewers that are making IPAs, and many of them are specifically calling them out West Coast style or American style IPA. So what's happened is that the United States has simply taken its place and claimed a spot on that mantle of world-class beer styles, along with something like a Bavarian style Hefeweizen, or a Belgian style triple, or a British style ESB, which are all classic world beer styles. Now up there on this mantle is also American style IPA, American strong ales, American style pale ales, et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, it's something that we have to be enormously proud of because we have literally changed the reputation in 30 years from being the laughingstock of the world when it came to beer to now having pretty much every country, every brewing country around the world looking to us for inspiration. And they're copying us outright, which is actually, sincerest form of flattery. So I'm going to take you back in time just a little bit. Sort of describe how did we get here? How did this all happen? How did we get to a point where we're able to make this rather bold and to some people shocking claim that the United States is now the greatest brewing country in the world? Well, we'll go back to the late 1800s, around 1870s, where their mode of transportation was slightly different than the one you see there. It looked a little bit more like this. It was what you used to make your day trip out from the brewery. And in fact, that was the radius of distribution that any brewery had, was how far could you get with a horse-drawn cart out and back from the brewery in one day. And that was your distribution territory. Well, as the Industrial Revolution kicked in and we had advances in refrigeration and in transportation, there became a lot of consolidation. As the big brewers consumed the smaller ones or simply put them out of business. And we went from over 4,000 breweries in the United States in 1870, more or less, to just 42 breweries there as the low point in 1979. 42 breweries in the entire United States. And interestingly enough, you can see by this graph, Prohibition really had no effect, other than if you were in the middle of Prohibition, in which case it sucked. So, but to the overall curve, it had little effect because it went down to zero there in the late 1920s and 1930s, early 1930s. It bounced back up more or less where you can see that trajectory was already going. Now, as happens with low points, often you have to hit bottom before you can start coming back the other direction. In the 1970s were really, it was an awful, awful time, let alone the fact that when disco music came out. It was an era of pre-wrapped cheese slices. It was an era of enriched industrial white bread, fluffy white bread in the polka dot packaging, and the like. It was an era of freeze-dried, vacuum-packed instant coffee crystals. An insult, to say the least, on the American public. And yet, so many of us, we learned not only to buy this stuff and consume it, but we actually thought that this is what represented coffee. So little secret, or little, it's not hard to imagine that this was also the era that light beer was invented. Essentially what I'm saying is nothing good came out of the United States in the 1970s. I know, some of you go, hey Greg, well, hold a second, what about Zeppelin? Yeah, no, they're British. So 1987, fast forwarding a few years, is when I had my first beer epiphany thanks to Anchor Steam, which is pictured up here. Anchor Steam, the venerable brewery that through the 60s and 70s was the only one that was doing anything different. In 1979, 42 breweries, but 41 of them were making essentially the same damn thing and just marketing it different, pricing it different, right? All these perceived attributes. You guys know the difference between perceived attributes and actual attributes. So they were all on perceived attributes, while one was actually actual attributes of brewing something that was actually different and, I might say, quite delicious. So that's when I had my first beer epiphany, and it led me down this path. You see me there in the white T-shirt. I don't think I've changed at all. And my partner, Steve Wagner, in the white pants there. We opened the Stone Brewing Company in San Marcos in 1996. We'd gone individually down this path of beer geekery. We've both been going to about every small brewery we could find, beer festival. Steve was an avid home brewer. That's how I first got to know him. We started home brewing together, and eventually we said, look, we got to be a part of this revolution. We got to be a part of this fight, because it really was one. We had, as the United States, been so down in the doldrums, and a lot of us hadn't even realized it. You know, the boiling frog scenario, when you're living in a situation that becomes so bad, and it becomes bad by degrees, you know, that chart that showed the decline of breweries. You don't always have the long view to realize that 50 years ago there had been choice, but today I ain't got none, or essentially none. So we decided that we needed to be a part of this revolution that had been inspired by. It was still relatively young as an industry, When we opened up, we were the 800 and something brewery in the United States. So a significant leap forward from the 42 and 79. But just to give perspective, we have now more than 4,000 breweries in the United States. So we are now at the highest point. Just about a year and a half ago, we passed the 1870s as the point in the United States history where we have more breweries than ever before. Now, when you think about it from a per capita basis, it's still going to be a lot less because the population was so low back then. But to be fair, the horse-drawn cart and carriage and all that kind of stuff, things have changed a bit, so it's hard to draw a direct comparison. So at Stone, we celebrate diversity in beer. We celebrate the range of what beer can and what we think should be, which is a range of choice. It isn't the industrialized, lowest common denominatorized, homogenized, fizzy yellow beer that was sold to us via the television commercials. And interestingly, that's the same thing that Germany is suffering through today. Most people, when you say beer, they think of the stuff of the television commercial. In fact, they have a term for it. They call it TV beer. Now, if I say TV beer here in the United States, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about, but that's the common vernacular. It's a common way to refer to it. And that essentially means a cheap industrialized beer. You can get two crates. Now, in this case, a crate is 15 bottles, but it's 15 half-liter bottles. So it's going to be roughly equivalent of our 12-ounce case of 24. Two in supermarkets for 10 euros. That's about $13. They have mastered cheap beer. But, of course, what happens when you master cheap? What do you get? Cheap beer. Yeah. Which is not really something to be sought after. I mean, that's great if you're inviting a lot of friends and their friends' friends and their friends' friends' friends over to a party, and you're like, I'm not going to pay for the good stuff for them. Okay, I got that. I did one of those when I was in college and my folks were out of town. But that's generally not a way to, awesome lifestyle. So, over the years, we have never advertised. We've never discounted our beer. We've made beer that we realize most people don't like. Nobody asks for the beers that are big character, bitter beers of the like that we choose to make. And where's that gotten us? Well, as she said in the intro, we've become the 9th largest brewery in the United States. We're actually the largest American-owned brewery in the southwestern United States. And actually that just changed. We're actually now the 8th largest craft brewery in the United States because one brewery that was a little bit bigger than us just sold out to Heineken, and they took themselves out of the craft brewing status. So by attrition, we moved up a spot. Not the way that I like to do it, but hey. So this picture before, that's actually, how many folks have been out to our place in Escondido? Awesome. Please come visit.
It's closer to go to the Liberty Station.
It is closer to go to, how many folks have been to our place in Liberty Station? Please come visit. So, how many folks think that maybe they're not so sure that they like beer and are brave enough to raise their hand in the audience here? Okay. Nobody at that table? Really? You're going to say that you like beer, but you've never been out.
They're not 21 yet. So
They're not 21 yet. Okay. That's valid, although I'm still not buying the whole, the beer thing. Okay, I got that. But we have a full restaurant. You can still come and not have a beer, although it's more fun with a beer. So, hi. Hey, we're awesome. We've been named the top-rated brewery on planet Earth of all time, top-rated brewery of all time on planet Earth by Beer Advocate, which is the largest website and magazine for beer. We've been rated that twice. I don't know how you can do all-time top brewer twice, but we said thank you very much. That's very kind. Basically, we've done it all by aggressively going our own way, doing the things the way that we think that it should be done versus the way that the marketplace was telling us. And it's led to some pretty rough times, to be frank. Back when we first started, this picture of our very first bottle of Stone Pale Ale, which is our very first beer we produced and the very first 12-ounce bottle that we ever made. And that's my partner, Steve Wagner, and our lead brewer at the time, Lee Chase. And it was a time where we were self-distributed, and we would lose money every time that we would deliver a case or a keg of beer because our volume was so low. It was more expensive to make the delivery than we made by making the delivery. So we started talking to all the wholesalers in town. And I knew, initially when we started off that wholesalers wouldn't be interested in carrying our beer because we had no reputation, we were way too small, and craft beer wasn't the thing that it is today. So about a year and a half into it, we were bleeding money at the tune of $20,000, $30,000 a month. I reluctantly went out to all the wholesalers, the Bud guy, the Miller guy, the Coors guy, those are the ones that were in town at the time, and said, hey, they carried other brands also. And I said, hey, would you be interested in working with us? And I got a no, and I got a no, and I got a, yeah, okay. And it was the Miller wholesaler at the time, which doesn't even exist anymore. They've combined and sold and all this kind of stuff, so it's a different company. But they said, yeah, it was November of 1997. They said, okay, yeah, we'll start with you. It was October. They said, we'll start with you in December. And about halfway through November, they said, you know what, December, I got a call. They said, December, too busy, holiday time, all our salespeople, they're running around just trying to handle all the holiday stuff. We'll start with you in January. And I got a call in December, and they said, you know what, January, Super Bowl is going to be in town. This was January of '98 when the Super Bowl came to San Diego. It says, our salespeople are going to be running around like crazy, preparing for the Super Bowl, very intense time for us. We'll start with you in February. I got a call in the middle of January. You can see where this is going, huh? And they said, you know what? Everybody, our sales guys, a lot of them are going to be taking time off in February because Super Bowl, it was at the very end of January. They're going to be burned out because we're running them so hard. We'll start with you in March. And it was at this very desk sitting right here that I got a call in February of '98. But this call went a little bit differently this time. He says, you know what? We're kind of busy. And we changed our mind. We're going to pass. And that's what he said. Of course, what I heard was, we're going to let your company die. And it's that moment actually is so visceral to me. As I hung up the phone, I walked a couple of feet over to my partner Steve's desk. I got a lump in my throat, right? And because it was everything that we've been working on for years, I just saw it dying right then. Because they were our only hope. We were losing so much money, and we were out of money. We could not sustain it, period. But what I didn't realize at that moment was how beautiful March was. And March turned out to be beautiful because we made $200 when we didn't bleed money that month. And literally the clouds parted, the sun shone, and for us the angels sang. And we had our first break-even month. We had a lot of time over the next year and a half of going below that break-even line, but it wasn't so far below, and we could see the light at the tunnel at that time. And obviously, I wouldn't be standing here today or sitting here today if we hadn't eventually made it. But it was a really interesting time, and I'm glad to see that we pulled out the other side. And as mentioned, we started. Hey, since we're going to self-distribute our beer, maybe we should work with other brands that we really respect. And maybe we should take their beer to market too. And so we started doing that. And so now we're actually not only a brewery, but we have the largest independent craft beer wholesalership in Southern California, representing about 35 craft and specialty brands. So when you're at your local pubs and grocery stores and restaurants and markets buying beer, hopefully good beer, and you buy it from, say, Avery Brewing Company or the Lost Abbey or AleSmith or Bear Republic and Maui Brewing Company and so many more, you're actually getting beers that were delivered by our company, sold by our salespeople, warehoused by our warehouse people, and so on. And we feel privileged to be able to represent these great beers and bring them out to the public because we believe in the rising tide floats all boats mentality. So I thought I'd share this with you. This is my favorite quote ever. So when the Black Album came out in 1991, BAM magazine put Metallica on the cover with this great quote. Metallica went to number one. Metallica didn't go to number one came to them. And I love what that said. I love that said is, hey, look, Metallica was successful by, wow, by being Metallica. Not by trying to go to people to write, to listen to the radio and say, what's the popular style today? What kind of songs are hitting the charts, et cetera, et cetera. They just go, hey, this is who we are. We're going to do what we do. If you like us, great, right? And, you know, Metallica is one of only 3 American bands in history to have 5 number one albums. How many Metallica fans in the room? Okay, small number of people. What's wrong with you guys over there?
They're young.
Yeah. So, whether you like Metallica or not, and these guys are a really good example, whether you like them or not, it's easy to understand that we all know that Metallica doesn't care if you don't like Metallica. And that is exactly how they should feel. If you don't like Metallica, they're like, cool, we don't care. But you guys that raised your hands, you're our people. We do what we do for you. Because if they, for one moment, started paying attention to this table over here, like I am, what they would do is they would take their attention off of being Metallica, you know, the best Metallica they could be. Now, this is all without thinking about the last few albums. I don't want to get into that discussion, because that's a different discussion. But we all know that, you know, they were great. And in fact, it's kind of interesting to think about what Steve Jobs and Metallica had in common, because Steve famously said, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And similarly, Metallica and Steve both said, look, this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. You don't know what you want or don't want. So we're just going to do what we do and let you decide for yourselves. Because if I listen to you, it's going to dilute what I do. And if I don't listen to you, then I have an actual chance of greatness. I have an actual chance of doing something special. And just like I had that experience years ago with Anchor Steam in 1987 when I said, holy shit, beer can taste like this, I had no idea. Because it was an era of only the fizzy yellow beers of the television commercials. So I had this epiphanous moment, and I actually had 2 reactions when I had my first Anchor Steam. One was excitement that, wow, a beer can actually taste like this. I had no idea. And the other reaction I had was, well, honestly, I was angry. I was angry because I realized all of my previous beer drinking years that had been stolen from me by the lies of the man telling me that other stuff was beer, and now I knew better. And so all you guys of beer drinking age, and some of you of not beer drinking age, know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the interesting thing, is that we all know that the term digital natives, of course, refers to folks that have grown up, come of age, in an era of iPhones and all this stuff, and not knowing a world anything different. So we also have an era now of craft beer natives. People are turning 21, and they don't know an era without an amazing selection, a great range of quality choices. This era of fizzy yellow beer that I'm talking about, that's just one of the many, many choices that they have today. And basically, you kids have no idea how good you have it today. Get off of my lawn. Now, but this is very exciting because, of course, this is what I've been working for and everybody in the craft brewing industry has been working for, is this era of choice, of quality, of character. So this is our place that some small select number have been to up in Escondido. We've actually opened up our restaurant 10 years into the existence of our business. We opened in 96. In 2006, we opened the Stone Brewing World Bistro and Gardens at our new production facility that we built in Escondido. We opened up with no sign on the building, out of the way, hard to find, no TVs, complete ban on high fructose corn syrup, meaning no Coke, no Pepsi, an all organic menu, very eclectic, no burgers and fries, no chicken sandwiches, so outside of the norm for, especially at the time, things have become a little bit more eclectic. And no ketchup, exactly. No ketchup. Because we didn't have anything you should put any damn ketchup on. And the three closest restaurants to it at the time were Chili's and Applebee's and an Olive Garden, which are very good at understanding their demographic, concentric circles and all this kind of stuff. Where has that gotten us? Well, we've actually become the third largest visitor destination in the north half of San Diego County after the Wild Animal Park and Legoland, of all places. So we'll have well over 600,000 people a year visit. We give tours to 65,000 people a year. Come visit someday. Come visit, please. Okay, got one nod, thank you. And then 2.5 years ago, we opened up in Liberty Station, which is significantly closer here, just over down on the other side of the airport. It's the largest restaurant in San Diego County at 23,500 square feet under a roof, about 700-800 seats. And we have a small pilot brewery, a 10-barrel system there. And I'm happy to report that things are going very well. So a few years ago, we said that we wanted to be the first American craft brewer to own and operate our own brewery in Europe. Well, just over a year ago, last summer, we announced something I'm going to talk about in a second, but first I'm going to talk about Richmond, which is this picture. Okay, got out of order here. So this is Richmond, Virginia. We're opening, so this is under construction. The roof is actually on this part now. This picture is a few weeks old, but this is a 213,000 square foot facility we're building from ground up. Downtown Richmond is just right here. And we'll be adding a 37,000 square foot restaurant with gardens that's larger than our Escondido place. So if you find yourself out east in a couple years, pay a visit. And then in last summer, we announced that we'd found a spot in Berlin, Germany. And we're under construction right now in this beautiful 1901 historic gasworks building. And we'll be opening at the end of March this coming year. And that's kind of the story that we have about Stone Brewing, and looking forward to continuing to bring great beer to the people. And I appreciate your interest in talking about it.
My husband has spent a lot of time in Germany drinking bad beer, much to his chagrin,
Yeah.
because he caught on to this whole craft beer thing a long time ago. But he has asked about the laws in Germany,
Right.
and what they call beer. So are you?
Yeah. So in Germany, it's famous. They have the famous Bavarian, what they call the Bavarian Purity Law of 1516, which is supposed to be the world's first ever consumer protection law. It's the Reinheitsgebot. And basically, it dictates that only barley, hops, water, and yeast can be used in beer. And anything else can't be labeled beer. And it's the first thing. In Germany today, people still have such a low impression, that 35-year-old image of the United States, that one of the first questions people ask me when they find out that we're opening a brewery there is, but what about the Reinheitsgebot? What do you do? As if I couldn't manage to make beer out of the 4 fundamental beer ingredients. Sort of like, hi, I know that we're dumb Americans, but give me a break here. This is how you make beer. You make beer with those 4 ingredients. Now, we have 3 beers that we're serving here tonight. Stone Pale Ale, it fits within the Reinheitsgebot. The Stone Enjoy by IPA also fits within that, because they only have barley, hops, water, and yeast. The 24-carat golden ale that is sort of it's a beer that's designed to emulate the flavor characteristics of carrot cake, doesn't qualify. Because we made it with a ton of carrot juice, with some milk sugars, and some cinnamon and some other, by adding. So what they have is this impression that because of the large American beer companies, Germany had this impression that all we did is just add a bunch of chemicals and stabilizers and all this cheap stuff into beer. That was true for the big guys, but not for what the craft brewing world does. So it's a completely different understanding, and that's actually held them back. And the reason why I believe that the American brewing culture has gone leaps and bounds past them, just leapfrogged them, is the fact that when it came to the commonly available industrial beer, or if I'm going to be less delicate, I'll say it this way, because German crappy beer has been tolerable where American crappy beer ended up being absolutely intolerable. And so if you have barely tolerable industrial beer, and you can get by with that. And so they were coddled into submission. And now, as your husband says, you go over to Germany and you're like, oh no, this kind of sucks. Yeah, it's just like, I thought it was supposed to be this, Yeah.
Greg, what inspires your taste as far as like adding citrus true brew or, just the cinnamon? I mean, it was a great combination.
Yeah, it's all about, hey, what can you do? So I often, because I was in the music industry years ago, I relate a lot to the music industry. And so you think about it, with those four ingredients of barley, hops, water, and yeast, it's almost like guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, right? The fundamental of nearly any style of music, from jazz to folk to rock to, et cetera, et cetera. Then you can start layering on, all kinds of instruments, right? And so while I suppose at different times in history, there have been those who have said, no, if you use electronic keyboards, that's not real, man. That's not authentic. That's, we've gotten over that, right? Like, no, it's another way to express yourself musically. It's another possible instrument that you can add into the mix to bring out your style. And that's the same with all of the legitimate ingredients. So if you're doing it to cheapen what you do, to save money, okay, that's bringing it down. But if you're doing it to add spice and flavor and character, but it's not to cheapen, then you're expressing yourself in an artistic way. So we think about it from a culinary perspective. And so we used really expensive carrot juice concentrate when it came to, it was organic, and it was actually from Southern California. We very carefully sourced it. We hadn't done that before. I hadn't had to source, insane amounts of carrot juice. But it's how you do that. And so I often think of, going back to Germany and Europe, great classic German beers and European beer styles are almost the classical music of beer. They're nuanced, they're storied, they're artfully executed. They've been brewed for literally hundreds of years. There's a lot of depth and there's a lot of expertise to them. The beer that most people drink is the Muzak version of that, the elevator music version. You can recognize, I can recognize the notes, but the soul is gone. It's electronic in a bad way. There's no character, and it's just cheap. It's played by computers and stuff, right? So, and in American craft beer, we tend to be, and I'll personalize this to Stone, we're more rock and roll, right? So I love living in a world that has great classical music and rock and roll. I wouldn't want to live without either. I'd happily live without elevator music. Yeah.
Why do you think, San Diego, of all places, that became, the mecca for our craft microbreweries? I find that interesting because you think of other places in some of the European beers, and there's storied places where, like you said, they have history and for years and years. And in the United States, San Diego is not the place that formally popped to mind when you thought of beer. It was St. Louis, Milwaukee, places that had that German influence in our
right. So I believe it was because we had a bit of a blank slate. We had a blank canvas that we could just start, painting our art on. In San Diego, we had essentially little to no brewing culture. And if I'm going to take credit for anything, I'll say this, is that at Stone, we were really the first brewery to take some serious left turns, to really branch out and go our own way. San Diego wasn't a hoppy beer paradise. It wasn't a paradise of triples and all these intense and widely varied styles. It was an area that mostly it was the pale ales and your typical brew pub would have a golden ale, it would have a pale ale, it would have a Hefeweizen or however they pronounce it. It's supposed to be called Hefeweizen, by the way, et cetera. It's an amber, things like that. And we came out with beers that were more aggressive and bigger character. And other breweries saw that, hey, Stone is being very successful doing that. Maybe we should be more creative too. Now, they get full credit for their creativity, right? But I think that in some ways, we just showed that there was an alternative business model out there of kind of getting a bit crazy. Now, what our version of crazy back in the late 90s doesn't sound so crazy today, right? But when we came out with Arrogant Bastard Ale in 97, 7.2%, there was almost nothing like that on the market in the entire United States. This big, bold, strong, hoppy beer. Interestingly now, that's sort of in the middle of the spectrum of the craft brewing world.
I need your help. The holidays.
I'm here to help. Yeah.
Holidays are coming up, and I'll be entertaining cooking.
You'll be entertaining
Entertaining and cooking.
and cooking. Yeah.
So Thanksgiving comes to mind. I usually serve paired up with some wine.
Right.
I'm not a beer drinker. Help me recommend something that I can serve at my party.
Okay. So I suspect when you say that you're not a beer drinker, what you're meaning is you're not an industrial fizzy yellow beer drinker. Neither am I. So I support you in that. But don't get caught into, if you would ever, if you thought that white Zinfandel, cheap white Zinfandel was the only wine, you wouldn't be a wine drinker, would you? Right? But even when good wine came out, you'd still probably go, I don't know, I'm not a good wine drinker. I'm not a wine drinker until somebody's going to push you into. So let me give a little nudge back into craft beer to go and experiment. And I think you'll find that if you're somebody who likes good flavor, that you will find yourself you're a craft beer drinker. Now, to directly answer your question, it's a lot easier to make amazing pairings in the beer world, in the craft beer world, than it is in the wine world. Wine world, you actually have to be pretty studied. You have to really know what you're doing to match the flavors and the acidities and all these kind of characteristics. Beer, you can almost throw a dart and you can have some really amazing stuff. So frankly, what I would do is go to your local beer store and just get a nice selection. And you'll find that your guests really love this idea of all these different beer, bottles open. Not like this one's for me, I have to select one. Open them up and share them around. Put a couple of more glasses out at each plate and encourage people to discover what they think the great pairings are. And say, hey, which one do you think pairs best with the, this dish or this dish, the mashed potatoes or the gravy and the turkey and such. And have some wine for those who like that as well, because I believe in the full spectrum. But maybe don't pull the wine out until an hour into it, and sort of make people drink some beer. And you'll find that you'll turn on a lot of light bulbs. You'll get those, wow, I didn't think I liked beer. This is amazing. And they'll have that same experience that I had in 1987, thanks to Anchorstein. It's not guaranteed. The worst is they'll go, yeah, that was nice, that was interesting, but I prefer a glass of white Zinfandel, in which case you say, go down to the corner store and get it yourself. Yeah.
In addition to your phenomenal products, you've built a multi-million-dollar complicated business. So is that the business acumen that you've developed along the way, or how talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I don't know how I've done it. It's that one foot in front of the other, right? You just keep doing it every day. You bring on a good team, of course, and it's not just a good team because any company requires that. But at Stone, we've always focused on bringing people in that believe in the things that we believe in. Of course, that centers around beer, but not strictly beer. We have strong philosophies about our community involvement, our environmental responsibilities, organics in the restaurant, working with and featuring other beers and breweries on tap in our restaurant with our distribution company, things like that. So what we do is we really want to find people who are passionate about what Stone is all about and bring them in. And I can't tell you over the years how many times we've desperately needed a position filled. Found somebody who was completely qualified for the position, and I would not allow them to be hired because they couldn't show us through an interview process that they really gave a rat's ass about what Stone was about. Right? Worst thing you can ever tell me in a job interview, why do you want to work at Stone? It's close to my house. Okay. That says, it's convenient for me. I don't really care about, but if you say, oh yeah, so I first visited you guys when you were in San Marcos, or I went to the anniversary celebration. So cool that you do that for charity. Or, man, the first time I had a Stone IPA. Or I went to your restaurant and I read your food philosophy in the menu, and that really rang to me. I don't care what it is, but you show that you care about what we're about. Now I'm a lot more interested in you, right? I'm a lot more interested in the idea that you coming on board, now you're not going to just support the job function that we need. You're going to support our vision as a company. And I think that's made a huge difference in our company over the years. So it's because of not just great people, because we could have hired a lot of really awesome people that maybe just didn't click with us for whatever reason on some of those other aspects. But it's putting all those things together that's sort of allowed us to do that heavy lifting that we do every day. And I get to work with people who care about the things that I care about, which is always more fun. Yeah.
So in terms of business model, if you look at when you guys started, craft beer wasn't big, and possibly the big guys weren't interested in replicating you guys in the beginning, possibly because they thought this is something so small, not really something for us to do. But now that it has become sort of the in thing,
It's a thing.
what stops them from trying to get into your space? Why are you still alive instead of being overlapped?
Well, they would love, yes, so the big guys would love nothing for one, craft beer to go away. They are now buying craft breweries. They have their crafty brands, ones that look, the Blue Moons of the world. What? That comes from Coors? It does? Yes, always did. For those who aren't paying attention. But it's not so easy because fortunately, we are in a business that a lot of our fans are passionate about what we do. And it's, again, I'd say it's very much in many ways like the music industry. So you can have your pop radio, which is a lot of corporate-driven schlock. You put together the latest boy band or something, right? Which is engineered to go at a certain demographic, knowing all the trigger points that are going to get the girls to go, ah, right? Or you can do real stuff that you care about. And I don't care whether you like Metallica or U2 or Jimmy Buffett, the Grateful Dead, or or some recent band that I'm naming because I don't really care anymore. It doesn't matter, but we in craft beer tend to be the types that actually care. We want to know who's doing it, why they're doing it, what are their philosophies, and this isn't to a T. There's plenty of people that drink our beer just because they're like, oh yeah, it tastes good. Well, I buy it from six-pack or a pint in a local pub. I buy it because I think it tastes good. What? It's made here locally? Oh, I didn't even know that. What? It's made by a company that cares about this, this, and this? I didn't even know that. And that's fine too. You don't have to. That's our job to care about that stuff. If you choose to care about it also, awesome. But the big guys, you can't just manufacture it. Now they try, and in many cases they've done a not so bad job at managing to pull the wool over people's eyes by paying no attention to the man behind the curtain style techniques. But they're they're giving us some, a run for the money. They're buying people, and they're buying companies, and as a result, they're going to continue to make beers under that brand name, and they're going to make them cheaper at their big production facilities, and they're going to start price competing in ways that we can't because of scale, and they're going to maybe save some money on the recipe that most people don't quite notice, and so on and so on. And it's going to be we actually have, I think, our most challenging times ahead. Yeah.
In the 90s, when you started to see the changing of the tide, how much of that was in the public palate changing, and how much was driven by the players in the industry innovating and challenging the public to look elsewhere?
So I'll go back to Metallica because it's such an easy point of reference. Really, it's kind of easy to get your head wrapped around. Did Metallica, were they successful because people were screaming for metal? Their kind of style, which versions of metal that existed, but not quite the way that Metallica had ever done it? Or did people respond because they did it? They did a great job at doing it that way, and people were like, holy shit, that's kind of awesome. I didn't know it could be done that way. I think it's a little bit more the other, is that we created beer styles, like I said, when we started at Stone, we were creating beer styles that most people didn't like, didn't think they would like, were unwilling to even try in many cases. And when they did try them, they'd wrinkle their noses. But we believed in them, and we kept doing it, and more people would discover and go, holy shit, like I did in 1987. I didn't know beer could taste like that. I actually really like that. And now I've discovered I like that. I'm going to do the same thing I did after my first pint of Anchor, which is, okay, now that I've sort of had this little light bulb moment, I'm going to look out there, I'm going to see what else is out there. And you start going down the rabbit hole. And then another brewery across town also gets another customer. Maybe it was our beer that turned them on the first time, but they find that they also liked, Lost Abbey, or they liked AleSmith or something. And or it could be the other way around. They first were turned on by an AleSmith beer, and now they found that they also like Stone. This is great. So it's essentially that snowball rolling downhill gathering, and it's become a thing. And yeah.
So what are the challenges in the procurement, especially like the period like this, lots of disruption going on in U.S. economy due to the environmental factors like drought in the California. So how do you manage those things?
Well, in Southern California, we get most of our water from the Colorado River, right? So the drought, while affecting all of us in one way or another, hasn't actually hit our production capability. But I'm very much looking forward to getting our Richmond brewery online next spring, because that'll help balance out our ability on that. Does that answer your question? Or awesome.
Is there any other challenges in your procurement?
Challenges in procurement, yes. When you go from hundreds or even 1,000 or even a couple thousand breweries to 4,000 breweries, and we're all chasing after, what isn't a fixed pool of resources, but it's moving, and it may not always moving, like hop varieties. We find a popular new hop variety we want to make a beer with. Can we get enough of it to make the volume of the beer that people will like? And so Stone Delicious IPA, the one that is our gluten-reduced beer, we actually can't make as much as we could sell because we can't get all the hops that we want. And so there's challenges. Hey, it's business, right? You got that business side, and it's there's new challenges every day. Yeah.
I'm amazed by how much of a destination the Stone facility is. Was that part of the business plan from the beginning? Did you guys envision that you were going to build this beautiful facility that people were going to want to go to?
That was very much the plan. So I spent the first 10 years at that desk, and I showed you in a very generic tilt-up concrete generic suite, right? And we had the little glass front where the front doors were, and I'd see out the window sitting at my desk, and there's these little perfunctory fingers of landscaping, just like that little thing that runs out in between the parking stalls. With the minimum code required amount of landscaping, looking at beautiful Southern California days, and just wishing I could go out and relax outside in the sunshine and have a beer. But our license didn't allow it because it was at the threshold and everything. So I overreacted, I overcompensated. when we built the Stone Brewing World Bistro and Gardens in Escondido. And I went, way far the other way, and I created these gardens to be able to relax and wander around and have a beer in. And it's quite a special environment now, especially a few years into it, as Mother Nature has applied her hand and making it such a great atmosphere. But yeah, it was by design. I wanted to make an awesome place to enjoy great beer with friends and family. Yeah.
So you're opening up breweries in Virginia and Germany. What's your vision for your company's growth in the next 10 to 15 years?
What do you get when you cross an elephant with a rhinoceros? Anyone? Elefino. So 10 or 15, we never, 10 or 15 years, I sometimes we have business students come do a study, a project on us, and I get asked questions like that, which I get, but I don't know. I couldn't have possibly predicted the past, more than a guess at the past 3 years or the next 3 years. So we really work in a shorter term. You've got to be prepared for what possible 5-year horizon might look like, but really the world just changes faster than that. So I don't know the answer. But here's what I do know. We want to stay true to our philosophical foundations, to be ethical in the marketplace, to work with others who we think are also have great visions. So that means having other brands of beer on tap at our restaurants, none of the industrial stuff, but good stuff, and so on and so on. And maintain these philosophies, and that's what we will continue doing. But exactly what it'll look like, hard to say. Yes?
You guys said fairly new to IPA. It seems like you guys have kind of mastered the lower alcohol content IPA. I was just wondering, what are your guys' marketing strategies and goals around that?
What are our marketing strategies and goals around the Stone Go-To IPA? A delicious, thank you very much, session IPA. I think that was our goal. What you just described, for you to have that reaction about that beer. Seriously, it's like, well, okay, can we make a beer that's 4.5%, make it really awesome Stone style, which is very difficult to put a lot of flavor, aroma, and characteristics into a small package, if you will, of ABV. Other than that, it's just, our marketing has been more about communication. We're going to tell you about who we're about. We're going to tell you about what this beer is about. We're going to have some fun with it. We're going to have beers like Arrogant Bastard Ale that have real personalities. But mostly it's about the beer and just about, us sharing that beer with you guys. Trying to tell you who we are. And I don't know how to answer the question differently than that, to be honest with you. Yeah. Yes?
I heard a little bit about the Stone Hotel project that's been put on hold. Is that going to be reopened at any point?
Yeah, so we had an idea to build a hotel across our street from our brewery in Escondido. And I think this is not an official statement, it may actually come back to life. It was put on hold because we just were focused on other stuff. But a hotel group has actually approached us, and they want to be the ones to finance it, build it, and operate it. And then I'm like, okay, that's good, because we really have other things we're probably better at doing. So it may happen. It may happen.
I know we're kind of running out of time, so maybe 2 more questions. Is that all right?
Okay, no problem. Yes.
So sort of in line with that, the opening the restaurant, we frequent the Escondido location, and it was actually the place that our 11-year-old picked to have her birthday dinner at. So I can't imagine that was part of the plan. So I'm thinking back to when you were making the decision to go into a restaurant. I mean, everyone will tell you probably the thing crazier than opening a brewery is to open a restaurant if you haven't done that. I can only imagine that anyone you asked told you that's a terrible idea. How did you end up with this place?
No sign, terrible idea. No Coke or Pepsi, are you kidding me? That's what everybody's going to want. No, Bud, Miller, or Coors, are you kidding? Those are the biggest categories in beer. No burgers and french fries, are you kidding? No ketchup, are you kidding? No TVs, well, what are you going to do? You're a brewery, people need to watch TV. None of that stuff. I'm like, yeah, horseshit. That's the way that everybody else is doing it, but that doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. So we have this very simple philosophy at Stone. It's be amazing. And so what that means to us and how I apply it is every decision we make, we try and make the more amazing decision possible. the more quality, the more ethical, the more sustainable, whatever exactly you can look at it. So for example, we mentioned the wine list earlier. And the idea of I have a choice. We're going to have wine at our restaurant also because wine can be good. Amazingly, it can actually be delicious. So what's the more amazing decision? To have a crappy wine list, a pretty good wine list, or an amazing wine list? Pretty easy. So we do that. And we tried to literally do that with every single thing along the line. Now, I realize that our version of amazing might not be everybody else's, but that's okay. That's part of being amazing, is being willing to do what your version of you think amazing is, and not try and follow everybody else's, because what happens when you do that? It's called lowest common denominator. And lowest common denominator and amazing do not exist in the same universe. So it's this philosophy like, hey, did we design it to be a destination restaurant? Most specifically, we did. We're in an industrial area, out of the way, hard to find. You're going to go to some trouble to come visit us. So if you're going to do that, I want to reward you with a special experience that's not going to be the same as the place around the corner. And that's exactly what we're doing in Berlin. Our restaurant and brewery in Berlin will be larger than the one in Escondido. It'll be this outside gardens amongst these historical early 1900s buildings in this beautiful, beautiful spot just outside of the dead center of Berlin. And people will visit from all over Europe and all over the United States. In fact, how many people are going to come for our grand opening? Anybody going to fly over to Berlin? Okay, so I got a couple. It's actually, I get that all the time. Greg, when are you opening? Because I want to come for the grand opening.
Do you have a date?
Late March is the proposed opening, and late May is probably when we have the ceremonial grand opening stuff going on. 2016? Next year, yeah. But that's how you do it. Is you use this philosophy, and then you just have that white knuckle grip on it. And that's a lot of my role at Stone, is to say, no, you know what? That person that's applying for the accounting role, they're amazing, except for the fact they don't get what Stone is all about. I want somebody who's amazing in the job role and cares about Stone. And you can just look through the cross-section of everything you can ever do, every decision you can ever make, no matter how small or how large, you've got a choice. And make the one that you feel the most personally strong about. And the worst kind of way to make a choice in these kind of circumstances is for me to think and look out to all of you and go, what do I think that maybe you might want? Most of the time, you have no idea. Or you've got the wrong idea because, and this is me too, I'm out and I'm one of you, I'm a consumer. Most of the time, if you ask me about any product or service out there, I'm going to only be based it on what I've experienced personally. I'm going to think I know. It's like sports or politics or the opposite sex, I'm an expert, right? Yeah, horseshit. Okay, actually, I know I'm not an expert on the opposite sex. That's a fact. But then there's sometimes somebody comes along, like we have in beer, we go, you know what? We're willing to be the experts. We've learned about this stuff. We've been passionate about it. Steve and I have been home brewing for years. We discovered what we thought great beer was all about. So the worst decision we could ever make would be to ask somebody else, what kind of beer do you think we should make? Because they're going to be basing it off of a very narrow framework of only pre-existing experiences. What if the day before I had that Anchor Steam, somebody said, Greg, build to me in your mind, describe the perfect beer. I wouldn't even had an idea. It would have been based on a fizzy yellow beer. And as Henry Ford famously said, right? If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So you got to just make that next leap and say, you know what? This is the way it should be done. And all of you who are out there in the world doing your thing, the only thing I would ever ask of you is do your thing the way you think it should be done, not the way that I think it should be done, because probably I don't know. And while maybe it feels more secure to follow what I want because then you've got a customer? Oh, if I do it the way, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be basing it on what everybody else is doing. And so I could go to you and I could go to this other one and get it maybe for a better price. And I'm going to be thinking from that mentality until you give me that experience where I discover by chance, hopefully, what you do. And I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know it could be done like this. This is amazing. I am now your biggest fan. And you have that moment. And that's what, I feel so lucky because so many people have said that to me in my career at Stone Brewing Company who have said, damn it, Greg, you've ruined me. I used to drink the cheap stuff, and now I can't anymore because I've had your beer, and it's awesome, and I didn't know beer could taste like that. Damn it, Greg, I go travel, and I go to Germany or wherever, and it's disappointing. Where I used to think it was pretty good, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's the best compliment that anybody can ever give to me. So, when we do things to the very highest level that it can be done because we've become experts in that particular field, that just gives average Joes like me who don't know that much about that product or service the chance to go, wow. And you know what? If I don't get it, then to hell with me because somebody else will and they'll care. Because I can't care and know about everything. And there's lots of people. That's why some people see it's, they think that I've just got this arrogant attitude or anything, something like that. When I say, hey, if you don't like our beer, that's okay. Then that just means we're not brewing it for you. But what that means is, if you don't like our beer, that's okay. It means we're not brewing it for you. We're brewing it for the people who love what we do. So anyways, forgive me, I've got to get out of here. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you guys being interested in what I have to say.